Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host, and here to talk again about a big, important subject to all of us. Each day here on VCTV, we talk about various technologies and the industries that they impact and fundraising in between. So how to fundraise, what's happening in the fundraising process, what's shifting or not moving in these industries, or where these trends and technologies are being impacted or not being impacted. And today, leading up to the week, we've talked a lot about artificial intelligence, blockchain, fintech, data, food, marketplaces, machine learning, robotics, industry 4.0, supply chain. What haven't we covered? Well, we're going to get to that today. But really what today is focused on is talking about fundraising in general. As we have every day here on VCTV, investors from around the world that are talking about investment. Investing for you, our live audience, as investors or as entrepreneurs, what to think about and opening in their mind into their process. And for investors, understanding what other investors are looking at, what they're paying attention to, and what changes they're seeing, as that's important to you and your processes as well. Now, before we kick off, as traditionally, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Elena and to the entire LATOKEN team for making VCTV possible and making all of us come together from different points around the world and be here for you. Today, at any point in time, if you've got questions, comments, concerns, feel free to drop them in the comment box. If you like what you're hearing, click subscribe or the thumbs up, and we'll do our best to answer those questions in real time. If not, we're all available online almost 24/7 at this point, and happy to chat with you and speak more. So without further ado, welcome speakers. I'm so appreciative to continue our offline discussion now online and continue to talk about this very important subject as investors and what we're seeing around the world. Now, let's kick off with introductions. Kevin, welcome to the show first time. A little introduction about yourself and a little background.
Yeah, hello, thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. So I am a business and finance consultant. I have worked in 45 or so countries around the world. I work with early stage businesses through to mid-sized corporates, helping them to scale and grow their business in every way. But a lot of that focuses on helping them to raise finance and to develop their business.
Wonderful. I love it. Dion, welcome back to the show. Another fellow fintech blockchain fan, as Kevin, I see, he's got blockchain all over in the background there. So welcome to the show. Same intro and a little background.
Sure. Thanks, Dylan. Good to be with you again. So we have a fund based out of San Francisco that's, I guess in the current fund, we're 3 years old. We've made 10 different investments, all early stage, predominantly fintech, and partially or part of that cohort blockchain base. So what we're looking for as a fund is up and coming companies that are not necessarily at a Series A and not necessarily just as a seed or just raising, but in a lot of cases, if it is a Series A or other type of raise, somewhere within around 6 months. So fairly early stage, we like that, and then we're along for the journey into future rounds if the founding teams, in fact, need or do them.
Awesome. Mohammed, welcome back as well. It's been a few days since I've had a chance to see you. I mean, we've been traveling so much on Zoom. It's been crazy, but welcome back. Good to see you in person. And introduction, a little background on yourself.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's great to be here again. And thanks to Elena and the whole LATOKEN team. I'm Mohammed Al Majid from Saudi. I'm working as a general manager at Roadshow, Saudi Arabia. I've been working with different companies with regards to consultations, investments, and whatnot in Saudi and the GCC, and also with other European and European countries and the US.
Wonderful. And Irina, welcome. First time on my edition of VCTV. So welcome to the show all the way from, I believe, Austin, Texas, another blockchain fintech haven. Little introduction. Yeah, there you go. Happy Friday, everybody. Little introduction background on yourself, please.
I'm My name is Irina Litchfield. So often people wonder where I'm from. I was born in Russia, live in US. I've been in financial technology for 15 years. I'm a founder of Lumeria. It's a brand new company that I launched. This company specializes in being the space for space industry. Basically, creation of space as an asset class is my kind of latest goal that I've been working on. I'm an advisor on a global securities exchange and founder of Blockchain Cubed. It's a financial technology consulting company. I love the innovation, and I've been driven by financial innovation since I came here 20 years ago.
Wow. Well, welcome. Welcome. A pleasure to have you. We're 4 for 4 on the fintech and blockchain side. I'm going to throw it to Mohammed to be included in that group. So Madera, so welcome very much to the show. If you could, a little introduction and background on yourself as well. Oh, you are muted, sir.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Mahendra, live in New Delhi in India. Right, and I've been in private equity for several years. My first fund was a vintage of 2006. I had about 350 million US under management. That fund has still, it's exited. So now I saw an opportunity now in terms of what's happening with COVID. So I've recently, a couple of months ago, launched a fund only for COVID opportunities. So we have started investing in early stage ventures, which are addressing what everyone now calls the new normal. So we have made some very quick investments in the last couple of months in about 4 startups at this point in time, one in healthcare, one in snacking, one in education, right? Which are catching on because most of the people are locked in, there are no schools, and the whole consumption pattern is undergoing a change. So we've raised the fund, and we are also in the process of continuing to raise the fund because we see increasing opportunities, not only in startups, but even in existing ventures which have had Series A or even up to Series B, who are wanting funds to actually pivot.
This is great, and I want to dive into this deeper, but I do have one question. Where is the fund focused on? Is it in any particular region, or is it a global?
No,
do you look at investments globally?
Yeah, I think it's basically focused towards the Indian market.
Okay.
But we are looking at opportunities in India which would have a global opportunity to grow. So we have invested in a company out of Singapore, and then we have invested in a company out of Dubai.
Wonderful. That's important for our audience. So guys, take note. If you're within the region, you've got someone who's paying attention to you today. Awesome. Well, Mahendra, thank you very much and welcome to the show. We're going to come back to that. Don't worry.
It's great to be on VCTV with you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're honored to have you as well. And Dr. Shakarath, welcome to the show. Your video is not on, but hope you can hear us. If you can, just a little intro and background on yourself.
Hi, Kyle. I'm on low bandwidth, and I didn't want to, put more pressure on my bandwidth as such. But of course, we are a country which is moving towards 5G. So I bring in the piece of family advisory. I am the managing partner of Chakra Venture Partners LLP, and we are a family office advisory firm. And we advise 10 of the 100 Forbes 100 lists in India. And the perspective that I'm going to be bringing in today's show is going to be the family offices and the families' asset classes, which are shifting towards digital currency and cryptocurrency and blockchain. So viewing that as an asset class from a family office perspective is something that I look forward to sharing with you, esteemed folks.
Wonderful. Well, let's start there. You've already got what you're bringing to the show. Let's start there. I mean, what are you seeing? You work with family offices, so top 100, which I think ranges up to over $100+ billion US in net worth and beyond. Oh, look, video is perfect. Video came on perfectly. You're good. How are you, or how is the venture process changing for family offices during this time? How have things been reallocated over the past 6 months for the families that you're working with?
Well, I would say that conservatism is on the rise. At the same time, any time lost in conservatism is actually a loss of opportunity. And typically, families and large families, which have typically $1 billion under asset, typically have earned a certain amount of IRRs, and when they don't see that IRRs coming in from their historical trades, they tend to look at newer perspectives, and those newer perspectives is something that 3 years ago we brought in through Bitcoin, through Ethereum, and so on and so forth. But again, it was quickly disillusioned, and it was quickly there was again a pushback from the families as such. But now again, the family offices are bringing back to the table the same kind of risk appetite that they brought 3 years back. And I would equate it to the similar situation equal to what we had in 2008, when a lot of families which had a lot of wealth started investing in emerging asset classes, which are turning out to be the big boys of the startup world right now.
I love it. I love it. Dion, to you, what are you seeing that's changed in the venture process? And we've talked about this almost every day on VCTV and get different answers from different investors. But I think we all have some pretty consistent ideas. But to you, what are you seeing that's changed in the last 6 months? And we're going to get to the future, but just over the last 6, what have you seen that's really changed?
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least. I mean, when COVID, the first, if you will, at least in the US, 4 weeks of COVID, we got very concerned if you were out on the fundraising side. So if you're a venture fund, you're out raising, you're kind of mid-raise, was the brakes going to be slammed, depending on if you're raising from foundations, family offices, US side could be public pension funds. And then were the deployments going to either stop or be smaller? And so on the raise side, I mean, what we've seen really in the last 3 months is more conservatism, but not stopping. Some of the tickets and deployments to the funds have gotten smaller, but they didn't stop. So we didn't see where maybe you were a verbal commitment and through due diligence and thought that, you're about to close that was not going to happen. I still see those deployments happening. Sometimes the numbers are smaller. And then on the raise side, then if you're a company, what I say, and I don't go too much a tangent here, but is more than ever, if you're out raising as a early stage, whether we do some growth equity, but mostly in a different fund, but early stage, is really understanding now, because it could have changed rapidly, where the fund is at. So if they're already funded, great, and they're deploying, but more than ever, they may be raising, and then really as best as you can understand is where are they at and how well funded are they, and did the fund then themselves, the venture fund, become more conservative? So really understand where you want to put your efforts on the fundraising side is probably more critical than ever. But overall, we're actually pretty buoyant. I mean, some went overweight with equities, or with the markets and equities. They thought, in private equity, maybe I'm overweight and I want to scale that back. But we're actually not seeing that. I'm seeing an awful lot of interest, but they're delving down deeper. Foundations are saying, and it's interesting with the other gentleman, is, okay, in light of COVID, how is this going to affect the portfolio companies before we deploy to your fund? So a lot of rapid movement.
Go for it, Kevin. Go for it.
I was just going to say, could I pick up on a couple of things from both those last comments? So firstly, crypto assets. What I've always felt that one of the reasons that crypto assets are becoming more acceptable as an asset class is, of course, we've got the reduced volatility. So that has puts them in more of an acceptable form, as it were. But one of the things I've always felt has been that they're probably the most decoupled asset from any other asset. So when there is a problem in the world, as we've just seen, currencies, stock markets, commodities, everything all tend to take a beating. And it was always my theory that cryptos were going to be somewhat out of that. They were decoupled from that. And what's been actually very interesting is that has actually been proven to be right. Because whilst the markets in many countries have recovered, nevertheless, they went down 30, 40, 50, 60%, depending on some of the stocks. But you never actually saw that with cryptos. They came down a bit, but they're basically stabilized around the just sub 10,000 US dollars for Bitcoin, for example. So I think that's one of the things why many of the big fund managers, the Swiss banks, all of these fund holders are actually looking at them and recommending them as being something that should play, admittedly a relatively small part, but should play a part in anybody's investment fund. But then if we move on to the fundraising that Dion was just talking about, I totally agree. The experience that we've had when we've been talking to different types of financiers is, if it's an investment fund, exactly, there's a lot of funds out there that have a lot of money, and they aren't earning the returns that they need to be earning if it's sitting there in cash, because no cash is earning any money anywhere at the moment. So they're actually quite hungry to be looking for good opportunities to invest in. So yes, there are less funds that are active. Some of them are rushing around having to try and make sure their own portfolio of companies is surviving and doing well enough. But there's, on the other hand, there's others out there that are hungrier than they would be normally. But then if you come down the maybe more towards seed funding or Series A, and you look at things like crowdfunding, again, when I've spoken to crowdfunders, they're saying that there are less businesses trying to raise finance because some of those companies just aren't the right companies at this point in time to obtain finance. Nevertheless, the level of investment still going across those platforms is pretty much the same. So that means if you're a company that has either benefited from the whole COVID situation or at least are neutral through it, you've actually got less competition out there from a company's point of view, but the same amount of money chasing investment. So if you're the right sort of company, there's actually, again, better opportunities for you. So it does very much come down to what type of company you are and who you're talking to. But I would say the experience is, there's still some very good opportunities out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just got a notification as well. Instacart just closed another $100 million today, or announced it, I should say. And so to that point, and even Mahendra's, I mean, there are opportunities, right? As companies are moving and shifting, there's opportunities for them to get investment as they shift. And one important thing that's been noticed or noted all the way through thus far for the audience, if you're paying attention, is research. So while there is capital out there, because there always is capital, it's just a matter of if it's right or not, and if your deal is the right opportunity or company as well, and industry, et cetera. But doing your research as a founder on your investors is very, very critical and something usually forgotten. And it's not just the industry they invest in. And I want to touch on this just for a second, and then Irina and Mahendra, I'm going to come to you. It's more than that. In an era like this that we just went through, the fact that, one, they have funds, two, they're deploying, three, that they've taken the time to provide or reinvest or spend time with their portfolio should be a very big positive signal for you as a founder going to those investors. That's someone that you can then look at as maybe being able to count on in the bad times, because we all know as companies are built, there are good times and there are very, very, very bad times and a few more good times. So it's good. I mean, to Kevin, to Dion, and also to Shikethra's point, is these are the things to note as a founder you should be doing in your research. So don't be pushed off that they're like, hey, we're focused on our portfolio right now, or hey, we're in the middle of a fundraise. These are okay things. Just note them and look at them as good quality. So Irina, I apologize. You had a point. I want to go ahead and go to you. Same question, continuing this discussion. Thank you, Kevin and Dion, guys.
I 100% agree with that. What I found throughout years is that the companies, the founders themselves, they almost kind of have this biased against the freedom of asking those questions. So as they approach the fund, or they know somebody's part of the fund, or as the communication starts happening, they kind of are concentrating on just showing who they are without first finding out what is the specific investment thesis, for example, right, for the company. And interestingly to me, when I connect with when I speak about that with the founders, they feel uneasy about it because there seems to be some kind of a mental block that makes them think that it is inappropriate. And so I feel that it is really lovely to hear that you guys are voicing it and revoicing it, because I think that to me, what that communicates is that it is the investor's responsibility in some way to communicate, right, to these founders that it is okay and it is not inappropriate. It's okay to ask if you're deploying right now. And in fact, it's more than okay. As an investor, that's all investors want to hear, because spending a long conversation with people time and after time again, when there's match, is just not possible. It's not feasible. It does not fit into the investment portfolio. I think that that's kind of like the more we close that gap, I think the more investments we will see and the more funding, because there is almost, as founders, they almost feel like they need to go and dance with investors. They need to woo them. They need to schmooze them. They need to do these things. But really, it's all about numbers first, right? Do we fit in? And then we see if there's actually relationship, right? It's not about all like me, let's have this connection in a way of trying to get the investment. It is a business transaction and it's all about numbers. So I really appreciate you guys are mentioning it, because it's been one of the biggest challenge to kind of get the founders to do that, because they're
it's a long-term relationship. You should feel that openness. And I think in fairness, just to add on, part of the reason that when I was just a founder and doing this as well at fundraising, part of the reason is in the past, it was limited options, right? You're limited locally, right? Regionally, you were maybe reserved in the amount of options you had of, just VCs or just angels. Today, and not just because of the pandemic or the era we've shifted in here in 2020, but in general, I mean, your options are plentiful. You've got family offices, you've got opportunity zones, you've got government schemes, you've got crowdfunding, you've got angels, you got angel groups, you've got VCTV, you've got everything.
All over the world.
All over the world. It can be anonymous. You can know the people. They can support you. They cannot support you. So to all of our points, and Irina, you bring up a great point. This is different today. And in that entrepreneurs should feel, and investors, as we are communicating, you should also feel more comfortable sharing that information as the founders are sharing with you their fundraising. You should also feel, a little comfortable that you're fundraising, because if you're taking investment, you want to know there's something potentially on the backside of that, right? This thing called dry powder. We're being more educated. Venture Deals is on, I think, edition 4. Brad Feld, thank you. People are becoming more educated about this stuff. Things like dry powder exist and founders know what that means. You're hoping that some of that may be reserved for you if you perform, if you perform and succeed, or you get into that tough situation like we're going to talk about here, that's there for you. And it's good to know that. So Irina, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to further that point as well with you.
Oh, not at all. It's interesting what you said, that we now leave, we kind of are segregated in our homes for a little bit because of our current global situation. But it's interesting that you pointed out that there is plenty. We're not segregated anymore. We're kind of a global community, and there are a lot of funds, and there's a lot of funding out there. Interestingly, also, I think it's a point to kind of to expand on is that often founders spend a lot of time talking to fund, finding out that they are raising. So I think, as to your point, to strengthen your point, that as a fund, as the VC, as those that bring liquidity into the world and give life to businesses and entrepreneurs and just work, I think it's important to kind of start creating internal standards for that, because it is discouraging for the projects to go out there and continue with endless meetings, with endless phone calls, to find out that this fund doesn't even, they cannot deploy, they cannot help them. And I think when that happens, a little piece of a heart of an entrepreneur almost dies, because it makes them feel that funds can be ingenuine. And I think that as soon as we eliminate that, we want the deal flow. I want to see every deal in the world that is raising, and I want to put them into the little ticker and trace exactly where they're going, all that. So the deal flow to me is very kind of a powerful thing. But I also want every liquidity provider, every fund, everybody that wants to give life to projects to also have them, right? So they can be connected and dynamic. And I think that dynamic relationship and that dynamic energy dies when you kind of hit the wall as a project, when you realize that, wow, I just spent 20 hours and shared all my documents and everything with the fund that will not invest in me, and I wish they told me in advance. But that means that you should ask, because as an entrepreneur, take on the responsibility into your hands and ask these questions. You, one, will communicate respect to whom you're speaking to, because you will be actually asking, what is that you are, right? And we all want to highlight. And two, you will save time and money for both parties. And then, of course, if you still want to connect with person, then you can already kind of build your relationship. That's not based on you thinking that, it's not based on the transaction. Then you just continue speaking to a person, maybe because you just love their stories, and want to go, right.
Right. I mean, it's a sensitive dance in the good way. I mean, you're building a relationship. You should feel free to communicate and engage.
Yeah.
And Mohammed, what are you seeing change and move in this industry around the venture process as well? And we talked a little bit about this recently on our episode of about a week ago, but would love to hear what's also changed further on your side to the rest of the points that have been made.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. Well, first of all, the current situation as we see it right now is we might describe it as follows: that it was a shock and panic, and then caution. Then, of course, people scout for solutions, and then identifying opportunities. After that, investing and reopening the economy. So as we speak, there's in 2020 in Q1 around $650 million investment in the MENA region, not just in Saudi, in the MENA region. And also when it comes to the advices for the entrepreneurs out there, I would say prioritize your investors from 1 to X, for example, and start from X upward, because you don't want to burn the good cards that you have first. So I think this is a very valid technique for all entrepreneurs who wish to raise money, and of course get the right team. And there's I would categorize them as 2 techniques. One, experienced team, which is you are getting experienced team from larger companies, and this would lead to larger budget for the salaries and whatnot. And the second strategy is a talent-based team, which might be a little bit not up to the vision and the ambition that you have as a founder, but it might be good for your budget, right? So, of course, the third one is the combination of the two. And also try talking to investors for various reasons, not just for asking for money. I mean, investors.
Oh, Mohammed, we may have lost you for just a moment, so we'll come back to you if you come back online. But Mahendra, Arena, yes, go ahead, and Mahendra, we're coming back to you, so get ready.
I think that he was going to say that investors are people and they want genuine connection.
Yes, Mohammed, you're back. Arena might have finished your point, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So for various reasons, because the other investors might invest in your company, and of course update your investors on a quarterly basis. That's not every week, not every month. Maybe quarterly basis would be also good. Investors focus on team and numbers. So make sure your team is ready, and also your numbers are attractive, and especially right now during the pandemic. And of course, think of raising the money for the next round just as you close the current round. Don't think about sleeping on an empty pillow. No one wants that. And guess what? If you find yourself in this situation, you likely are not going to raise any money whatsoever. So just get ready as you are currently raising the investment.
Don't sleep on an empty pillow. I like that. That's a good quote, Mohammed. That's all to you. Mahendra, same question to you. What do you see? I mean, you started a fund. So you obviously are seeing something trending and something changing in this venture process coming from PE, and then
Let me start from the funds themselves. I think a lot of discussions happened on the funds and fundraise. I think what I've seen is, and why I see an opportunity in a new fund, that the existing funds, keep talking about how the founders and how the ventures are going to be pivoting in this new environment. But I have not heard of any fund saying, I'm pivoting, I'm changing my theme, right? They are still stuck with the legacy themes, right? The pre-COVID themes, right? Because that's the basis on which they raise their money. Right? So they are hesitant to go back to their LPs and tell them that, I raised this money for fintech or for blockchain, but now, right, things have changed and this is what I want to do. So there's an element of hesitancy on the part of the funds to be actually going back to the desk again and saying, okay, fine, do I have a relevant theme today or I don't have, right? So that's where I see an opportunity for new funds to come, because some of the existing funds are going to find it extremely difficult to pivot their own themes, right? And a new fund comes in with no legacy baggage, right, and says, yes, right, I believe things are going to be different post-COVID. We don't know whether we are in the beginning of the phase of a COVID, we are in the middle, or we are seeing an end, right? So in some parts of geography, it is the beginning. In some parts of geography, it is the curve is so flattening. In some parts is increasing. So globally, we don't know that when this change would ultimately settle down, and we will see what has changed. So it's a kind of an evolving situation. So we will have to be very fluid with our themes at this point of time, especially the new funds and some of the existing funds, right, who don't see this change happening, right, may get dumped by their LPs.
That's a very, very good, insightful point, both of those, because we are starting to see that, right? Certain funds are trying to change their thesis, but certain things are just outside, but outside enough that they can't make the commitment.
Right.
So I think you're spot on.
They can't make the same. And when you have a crisis like what we are going through, the differentiations between different funds actually starts fading out, right? The ability for you to figure out which is a good opportunity actually drops manyfold, because the world is so uncertain, right? Some of the thesis which you were following in the past, that this is the this is the process which I'm going to follow to identify my target ventures, right, may not be valid today at all. So a lot of good funds which I'm seeing are actually sitting back and conserving their dry powder. They don't rush, right? Only put money into your existing investments where you believe that there could be a future. So preserve your investments, but don't attempt to make new investments. So that's where I see an opportunity for a new fund to come in, because a lot of existing funds, right, will hesitate to actually come a first-time entrepreneur, right? Whereas
especially during a time of uncertainty.
Of uncertainty. Whereas a new fund, which has been formed with that thesis that I'm going to be investing right behind new founders who have found new opportunities during this crisis, right? And
I'm seeing Kevin,
right?
Yeah,
and
I'm seeing Kevin and Dion to shake their heads as well. And Kevin, go ahead, Mahendra. Sorry, Kevin's got a point too, but go ahead.
And have the ability to take the risk of coming in with a new venture at this time. So that shows a lot about the founder's ability to take risk.
It is, and it's a time of, as you said, it's a time of uncertainty. So whether you're a first-time, multi-time entrepreneur, and that you're going out for a first venture, seeing an opportunity to maybe not just capitalize short, but long-term is very risk heavy. But there are plenty of funds and investors out there that will see the opportunity in that, as Mahendra is saying. So don't count yourself out. You're not down and out yet. The vintage year that everyone refers to is that 2008, 2009, 2010 early days, where all of the big, unicorns or camels or whales or whatever they're being defined as today. That's when those companies were started, because entrepreneurs, whether first time or multi, saw an opportunity to capitalize on something because they had the chance to focus on it, right? They had the open view versus figuring out their tunnel and staying in that. So don't count yourself out just because you're first time and you have a big idea, as Mahendra's point. Kevin, I apologize. You've got a point. Irina, I see you. Dion, you're shaking your head. It's a free for all. I'm just playing traffic cop. So go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to add some interesting numbers that the Financial Times reported about a month ago. So quite midway in lockdown in the UK and in most countries in the world. So they reported that over 40% of SMEs had pivoted in some meaningful way during lockdown. And of those, 21% were more profitable than they had ever been at any stage in their business life. So I think the companies that are coming out of this well, or at least the companies that are coming out unscathed, are those that have been agile, that have adapted what they're doing, have changed their business model. And what will happen going forward is lots of companies will keep the best of where their business model before all of this happened, but they will also keep the best parts of how they have changed or pivoted and use the best parts of both to move forward. So I think there are a lot of companies, exactly as you say, Mahendra, about that are changing what they're doing. And it is those that are the ones that really need support. I'm working with a business at the moment where before lockdown, almost all of its income came from face-to-face activities, and their projected turnover for the year is unchanged because within the matter of a couple of weeks, they put everything online. And they were always planning on doing that, but they brought it forward very, very quickly and extremely efficiently. So that has meant simply that for this year, this calendar year, they're going to perform as they expected to, but next year they're going to be performing much, much better because they've already brought that new revenue stream on board. So as we all start to hopefully move back to being able to meet face to face and do all of those sort of things, that level of business will come back in as well. So I think it is precisely, it's about supporting those businesses that recognize the need to change and are able to make that happen quickly.
And when these types of things happen, right, the acceleration of digitization, It's a lot of Asians, but it's a common theme we've had here on VCTV. When these types of things get accelerated, it's a good opportunity to jump in, as Mahendra's point is, take advantage of the shifting and changing in markets, because that means something new is needed. Something it is needed to be replaced. Opportunity exists. I mean, you've got food and beverage companies that are delivering that never once delivered. Look at someone like Chipotle here in the United States. You look at the events company that went almost completely virtual. And we now have virtual concerts. We have virtual events that are becoming a new normal, short or long, still to be determined, but it plays into a bigger picture for what Irina mentioned of what we're looking at ahead, right? The idea of being in virtual places, being in virtual environments. This is something that was coming. Digital currency. We've been talking about this for 10 years. These are things that we have been looking at. Just like the internet wasn't built in a day, this digitized world we're moving in will not be built in a day. And we're starting to see that next wave come here, which leads me to a big, big question for all of you is, where are you seeing opportunity industry-wise? Where are you looking at rising or new emerging opportunities? We talked about biotech this week, marketplaces, food, so much, but each of you, what are you seeing as very, very unique and rising opportunities for investment? And Kevin, we'll start with you since you're unmiked, and then we'll come around to everybody.
The business I was just mentioning is in EdTech, so which
education.
Yeah, absolutely.
EdTech, education tech.
Yeah, which comes back to some of the points already made by some of the other people. But there's obviously there's health tech and all those things, and as we've seen, blockchain, and all of the things you've been speaking about recently. So it's the new technologies. But the ability to actually deliver something in a very different way.
And in some cases, no one knows that it's new.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I'm not sure exactly what you've said, but there's a lot of ignorance, and I don't mean that unkindly, but about how much AI, blockchain, whatever, is actually going on in the background. So some people are not accepting it in theory, but they just don't quite understand that actually it's happening all around you.
And in some cases they don't need to, but we don't need to as consumers, right?
No,
it works. That's all that matters. Yeah. Mahendra, I see you're unmuted. So same question to you. What are you seeing as areas of opportunity right now from an investor standpoint?
I agree with Kevin that EdTech is a big opportunity because a lot of education is moving online. But I think I see within EdTech, I see huge opportunity in differentiated skill development. The skills which will be required post-COVID would be very different from the skills which were required pre-COVID. So the ability to be able to identify the new skill sets which may be required in different industries and in different educational curriculums is what is an opportunity which I see, right? So a differentiated educational curriculum is going to emerge out of this crisis. The traditional way of teaching and the curriculum may have to change. Right? So that is one opportunity where we can see an upskilling or differentiated skilling. Right? That's what the opportunity we are seeing. We recently invested in a company which is actually developing new processes for mental health. Right? People are going to see different challenges in terms of their own mental health. Up till now, most of the people suffered in their mental situation because of very personal issues. Right? Now people are getting impacted by macro issues. Right? So how do you handle a society's macro issues like the current crisis? Right, is impacting the mental health of total communities. It's not only just one individual. Right? Mm-hmm. So we have invested in a company which handles a community level mental health. Right?
Wow.
So it's going to be impacted. The different geographies, different communities will get impacted differently by different kind of crisis, whether it's a pandemic or it's an economic crisis, a geopolitical situation. Right? It's a natural catastrophe. You have an earthquake, you have floods, you have that. So very few startups or any new processes which have been developed, which actually look after the collective mental health of a community which has got impacted.
And key word there, community.
Right.
Community, companies building for communities. And we're not just
Right.
talking about focused around one particular
Focused on
industry.
one yeah. So I think the definition
exactly.
of the customer is going to change.
Yes. And location, hyper local has been a big topic, right? Again, back to communities. Think hyper local. To Mahendra's point, local and communities. Mohammed, what else are you seeing? I see you unmuting over there. So you're following the rules, but I want to give you the chance too.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much. I would love to add one point regarding the pivoting, because I think it's very important, especially right now. We are not yet post-COVID, but we are going there. You know, we are still. For pivoting, we'll focus on the short term in a way for pivoting. We've seen, you know, companies at the beginning of the pandemic trying to go fully online, but their business can never be fully online. So think about that, and also within the capabilities and resources of your company. For example, we've seen some retailers going online. That's good, and also for post COVID-19 pivot as well, because as the world is changing right now, the effect or results after COVID.
Irina, we're going to come to you. Mohammed may come back.
This is a question. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so, and of course, focus on largely data-driven pivots. And there are, I would say, two different investment levels that we think of, which is the macro investment and the micro investment. The macro investment is all about the economies, the larger companies, the big companies, and this is for the sovereign wealth funds that deal with. In the micro investment level, I suggest that companies will focus on two things for the which I see common denominator for investment. One, which is growth during COVID. This is very important, and the second thing is the near certain growth after COVID or post-COVID. So those two are very important for any investor to invest. And the sectors are what we've discussed before: e-commerce, fintech, edutech, and social media, and others. Those would be targeted by investors to invest in during this time.
Bringing up social, good call. That was a sneaky one. Social media. We're all social, more social than ever. We've traveled in 9 different countries today, and it's not even 9 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. So social media is definitely taking effect. Irina, to you.
Yeah, it's interesting how this new experiences for us of being excluded from each other really demonstrates to us how much we care about the connection, how much value it brings to us, ability to change. Even education is a big deal. I mean, in UT, and you know, Texas is a conservative state, they waived for next year. They waived the traditional testing that they do, so you don't need your SAT scores and whatever scores, and it doesn't seem so big, but it's huge, because basically we're kind of, all this is allowing us to move into a new era and really demonstrating to us what our values are. And it is very clear, our values are community, it's health, and it's health of our planet, and really kind of a new way of innovation. I believe that right now, and it is because of what we have experienced in the last almost 5 months for globally, and if we include China, who knows when that started. But it is really space opportunities. When we think about space, we think about kind of the big shining stars, right? We think about SpaceX, or, you know, there's two figures. There's Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and they doing an amazing job. And there are others too all over the world that have really big projects that are $1 billion worth of project. And for the most part, it's all about launching, right? So it's kind of like, how do we launch? And it is not all there is. It is interesting because space as an asset class does not exist. There are about 4 VC funds that specialize in a space investment. And the companies that actually exist in the space industry are extremely lean, and the things that they're doing and the services that they're providing for us are already very well established. So it's underfunded asset that's not really an asset class. It is something that's, as an industry, existed for over 65 years, right? However, it is only being a free enterprise for 10. So it's this new thing, I think, that is really kind of preventing a lot of innovation and holding back innovation, because what we need to do to be able to, for example, establish a camp or, you know, a station on the moon is really kind of a backup plan for us here on Earth, right? Because if we do get to the point where air becomes poisonous, hopefully for just a little bit, right? Where we have to start growing at home, it is in space that we're doing this. There are a number of companies that are building amazing product that is really important for our planet as well. And that is what I think the biggest opportunity right now. And one more thing, these projects are just, because they don't have funding, because nobody really understands, they always are compared to, oh, I already invested in like SpaceX or whatever, you know, I've already, like, don't worry about it, you cannot compete with them. Well, they don't compete with them. And so I do want to point one point there, is that what ends up happening is that they live in a very tough environment, so only strongest survive, right? And because there's not enough funding, what's happening is that a lot of these companies getting observed by Boeing and by whoever else, right? And when that happens, we all know that entrepreneurship kind of changes, right? Once you become observed into a big corporate company, which is for some a great pathway, but it cannot be the only pathway. It kind of kills that entrepreneur pathway. It doesn't allow them to get there. And so a lot of projects, they fear that. And so they survive and they grind, you know, they truly grind to succeed. They have revenues, they have talent, they have stories, they have numbers. It's just, you know, we are only now at the point to where they start having the actually something feasible, right? So as investors, I encourage all of the investors to look at these opportunities, because those are the opportunities that are available, they're ripe. A lot of them, like I said, already have revenue, right? Already have traction, and they need our support.
Yeah, and it's a growing industry. I mean, we've got some in the blockchain space. We've got some that are focusing on space or bigger orbits. We've got some in just deep tech, which we're going to be talking about next week on VCTV. So shameless plug. Thank you, Irina. Appreciate the shamelessness of that with me as well. But it is a very big opportunity, and it's something that's starting to come through. As we said, things are not built in a day, they take time. So stay and paying attention. And to Irina's point, entrepreneurs are gritty. They're They are bought in, and they are ready to survive and thrive, which is something very keen to pay attention to. And there's tons of information you can learn to get into the industry. We talked about biotech and food tech yesterday. Try unpacking some of those industries. There's plenty to learn. There's plenty to understand to make sure you're making a good investment, along with experts out there. Irina, super quick, because I need to get to two more people before we get to the top. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. So if you go to spacefund.com and you scroll down to space rating, it is a research that's done by the Space Fund that is very, very vast. You will be able to see all the companies and all categories. So it's a great analytic tool for you, and it's free.
If you're not bought into space yet, I mean, she's given you all the details. Send her a message. I feel like she's going to convince you otherwise. Dr. Shakiroff, I would love to get to you. What are you seeing as opportunities that you are excited about right now that you're looking at investing, or the families that you work with are doing the same?
I would run the risk of actually going against the entire community by saying this, but I wouldn't be specific about any company as such or any sector as such. Primarily because of the fact that any company which survives, like Kevin very rightly mentioned, which survives the pandemic right now, is a company that we are going to be continually going to be investing in. And if the pipeline doesn't change between pre-COVID and post-COVID, then that's a kind of company that we would like to engage in. And the point number two that I want to make quickly in the 1 minute that I have is I see a lot of companies that pitch to us initially saying that, look, there's a new idea and this is what we are going to achieve, and so on and so on and so forth. But very conservative in terms of pitching by saying that, look, it's a COVID related idea and this is going to make a mass market during the COVID era. So the short termism is something that families don't appreciate. And that's something that even funds should actually look at, why it may emerge out of COVID, but the impact should be long term. So that's something.
What's to come.
Yes,
exactly.
So that's something that I was just wanted to make a point in terms of the investors or the investees who is trying to make a pitch. Don't make a pitch out of COVID. Make a pitch from COVID, but for the long term.
Absolutely. You're jumping ahead to the last question I have for us in the show today, but you're absolutely right. It's not about raising for now. It's about raising for the long term. You're building a company, not just building for the moment, which is very important. Thank you for that point. Dion, Stephen, get ready. I see you taking notes. You got a lot to live up to from all this investment advice from these investors. Dion, to you, what are you seeing as opportunity? You live in the blockchain fintech world, as we all do, but what else are you seeing, or additionally in those spaces are you seeing as opportunities getting you excited right now?
Yeah, I mean, two of my favorite spaces, sector focus. I mean, clearly for our fund, we're predominantly fintech, but and there's a touch of space to that related to low satellite orbits, giving people connectivity. So when we look at fintech right now, particularly in what I call underserved markets and second and third world countries, is simply put, and this is COVID has only accelerated this with touchless access to banking and bill payment that people never had, is you're giving the world population a smartphone in their hand, and now all of a sudden they're realizing, and we're invested companies that focus on multiple different countries. It's just amazing that in a more developed country, you may have retirement plans that you didn't even know that existed, but now you see it on your mobile phone. Or you may have a small regional bank in Citibank in Chile, and all of a sudden they're saying, I can white label my bill payment and I can offer that to my citizens, right? And so broadly speaking, fintech, with COVID being more traditional, where you may go in some countries and you go into what a lot of people in Europe or US would think of your local 7-Eleven and pay your bill, you can suddenly do that on your mobile phone for the first time, and COVID accelerates that. So we're excited about fintech. Certainly health tech, but I won't talk a lot about that. We don't invest in that space, but there's so many developments there. One of the most interesting one to me, and we've made a couple investments now, is I'd broadly call it future of work, So that, and 3 years ago, I would say, if you mentioned future of work, people would not know what you were talking about. And then they started to think, future work being, are you a Uber driver and now you're a gig worker? And I sort of understand future work that way. But, what Mahendra was speaking about a little bit earlier, and I think with Kevin, is everything from ed tech to, how are people finding positions? How are they communicating on Zoom like this? Companies that are now paying gig workers at the end of their shift every single day. So instead of waiting a week or 2 weeks or a month to get paid, now you get paid every day. So future of work, I see from large institutional investors are now very curious, because I think COVID has really accelerated that to say, hey, the future, even let's say post-COVID, we have a vaccine. Now people are working more remote. It's accelerating gig. More traditionalists that were uncomfortable perhaps with that are now working this way. And now there's all kinds of new services. So fintech and future of work, yes, I believe that COVID accelerates that, but it's where the future is at, and we're excited about those sectors.
And thank you for defining that. A lot of people talk about future of work and just say the future of work, and really think that we're all going to just be, telecommuting all day, every day on Zoom, which it's good to hear that there's more to that you're looking at as an investor or audience, but also just in general as investors, to see that there's more to this puzzle than meets the eye.
I mean, it's the two most important in some ways, outside of relationships and family and love for one another, is, how you access financial services, how you get paid, how you save for retirement, if you even can, how you get, access to jobs and work is changing so quickly. So we're interested in talent tech, and I don't want to take too much time, but it's when you dive in, you start looking at, okay, well, how do you source and find talent? And there's the companies that are using AI or not, traditional offshoring and what have you. But then how does the talent engage? So certainly there's the Ubers and Upworks and Fivers of the world, but then you really start to look at different countries and say, okay, well, what about second and third world? And they're coming online. They're coming online quickly. Virgin Galactic or Virgin Orbit is looking to launch satellites into low orbit satellites using a Boeing 747, lower cost. But what does that mean is now all of a sudden, you have a smartphone, you all of a sudden can look at that and say, am I going to have gig platforms in second and third world countries that will open up work to certain people that never could work, that way. So it's fairly a deep topic, but I think the future of work is there's just a lot of opportunities with companies focusing, executing well there.
Well, even data, right? We've talked previously about data being skewed. So as those new emerging markets come online, or those new, individuals come online, how do you make sure that AI, if playing a role, or machine learning, does not skew the data that one person over another, based on their social presence or their online presence, gets a job when it may actually be based on skills, right? And understanding how that data gets looked at on some competitive level versus very skewed will be also a very interesting opportunity. And I'll add entertainment. No one mentioned it, but I'll add it. Entertainment, gaming, esports, we love it. We've talked about it, tons of opportunity. I'll pause there. Steven, I know you can hear me. You have been taking notes for the past hour. It is your turn. So to our audience, real quick, this is the second half of the show. We're going to come right back to very, very important tips that you need to hear from all of us as investors on the second half of the show. But first, we do have an entrepreneur who's here to tell us what they're working on and share with us their pitch. As judges and as investors, we will hear Steven's talk. He'll have 5 minutes, a hard cutoff, Steven. 5 minutes, hard cutoff. We will give him feedback afterwards. And then from there to you, our audience, we're going to go into what investors are shying away from and what advice they have for you, either as entrepreneurs or as investors, to not just look at today, but what to prepare for the next 6 to 12 months if you are fundraising or you're building in these spaces. Very, very key. We talk a lot about what just happened. Let's talk about what's to come. So stay tuned. In 5 minutes, we're getting to that. Steven, are you ready? All right.
Yes,
you got this. Cool. Stephen, the floor is yours. The audience is yours. As investors, we're here for you. You've got 5 minutes. Go.
Oh yes, my time starts now. Hello to you all. I was listening for the last like 45, 50 minutes. It was great inputs by all of you there. And now I would like to introduce myself. I'm Stephen Thomas and the founder of a social local e-commerce called Midley. And I'm here on VCTV. Thanks, Carl, for the opportunity, and Elena. So do you see my screen? I just want to confirm before I begin.
Yes, sir. In a beautiful presentation, you can see everything.
Do you see that people don't buy products, they buy stories? Do you see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what we believe in is people don't buy products, they buy stories. I'm sure you'll agree with me. So Midley, we're about to change the way you shop, sell, and socialize. We're trying to build a community of real people with real stories in real time. So what's the problem we're trying to solve? Fatma Ali, she's a 28-year-old banker, lives in Dubai. She can see the shop address in Google, or yes, she can, but she cannot find what's in store. Fatma loves to shop the look, but she has limited options to do that online. And often, Fatma can't wait that she wants a product delivered today, or maybe in the next 3 hours. There are few options except for food delivery. Now, the problem at large. Currently, no online options exist today to search and buy from a local store or brand within the city. I'm sure you all have faced this problem. It's challenging for sellers to identify their customers or create a targeted marketing and promotions campaign, or say, make customer-centric offerings. And thirdly, it's a costly affair for small merchants who wish to go online, even complex, to offer seamless omni-channel experience or last mile delivery. So current market solutions are incomplete. So what's the solution? In the age of influence, we've created a web and mobile platform with a mix of Instagram and Amazon, where users can search for product stores, posts, and lists. Sellers can display what's in store. Users can like, share, comment, share the experiences, purchases. You can let influencers sell for you, or yes, you could become an influencer and earn. It's really very interesting. So how are we making money? The revenue model. We'll charge marketplace commission, seller subscription, and we depend on the future revenue potential of advertisement and promotion. What's the business model? Our platform will help create awareness, which will then motivate the user to interest and interact with the subject or the product, as user can like your product, read reviews, or get influenced by an opinion leader. So assuming the user makes a purchase, our platform will then stimulate the user to share the shopping, product experience, and user-generated images. So this sharing will then attract other consumers and generate new interest. That's the loop. How big is the market? Wow, the market is 253.2 billion big, and the retail growth forecast is at CAGR 18%. But to start with, we'll start with a very small market, valued at 2.2 billion in Bahrain. Have we validated it? Oh yes, the MENA e-commerce market is estimated to reach 28.5 billion, CAGR 28%. But with e-commerce penetration of just 3% in the GCC, we definitely see a big opportunity there. Market facts, 40% of the population are millennials. And buying habits, 61% shop for clothes with average order value of 400, and 55% with an average order value of 200, much higher than the rest of the world average order values. So who are we? We are a great team. I'm an experienced banking and telecom professional with over 18 years experience. MBA from ISC Spain. Ross Cluley is the co-founder, international C-level professional. Manoj and Prabhu are the IT professionals with 18 plus years of experience. How are we as compared to the competition? We are a local e-commerce platform for retailers, private labels, and influencers. We are a promotion channel. We offer omni-channel. We offer a very interesting loyalty program for the sellers. So sellers who are stuck in the COVID and want an online channel, we have a one-stop-all approach for them. And the social features like comment and share. We have already acquired 75 plus stores in Bahrain, and they're willing to sign up at Midley. The product, like we said, you can search for products, stores, post, and list. This is what we different like. So we expect an investment of 1.4 million with a discount rate of 30%, and we hope to be cash positive at the end of year 4. Yes, though it's an uphill task, but we believe we can achieve it. Technology, we're using wide various technology. We've already completed 70% of the project, and we need 99,000 to go live beta in the next 8 to 12 weeks. Why invest in Midley? Because it meets the customer need. We believe it's innovative and unique. It will definitely offer long-term profitability. And what we all said with COVID and post-COVID, we think the timing is absolutely correct. So if you'd like to know more about it, we'll be happy to discuss that with you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Stephen. So go ahead and unshare your screen, and judges, my once investors and speakers, now judges. Would love to hear any feedback you may have or comments. Mohammed, I see you opening up the mic, so I'll give it to you for Stephen. So to you, sir.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing with us this presentation. I believe this is an online session, so I will not ask about details, but I believe in the market and also in the way that you are tackling the industry here. Two things I would recommend, or three actually. First of all, that we get in touch. Second is to focus on the traction, and third to quicken the expansion, because I've seen some companies in Bahrain. So I would suggest that you make an expansion very fast. Thank you.
Wonderful. Kevin, I see you shaking your head. I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same. With anything tech related, it is very much a case of getting out there and getting out there quickly, because if you don't, somebody else will. So it depends what your business is as to how relevant scaling up quickly is. But in this sort of case, it is indeed. I didn't quite catch. You said you were raising 99,000, but wanting to raise. But did you mention what period? When is that needed? What runway do you have?
Yes, we're raising 99,000 to complete the project in the next 8 to 12 weeks. And the overall requirement is 1.4 million. That's what we're looking for. Okay.
So my general comment is that founders tend to always leave raising funds too late. Raising funds quickly is always much more difficult. If you can find an angel or a family office or something that likes the project and will invest, that's great. But as I say, raising finance will always take longer in terms of start to finish, but also in terms of how much of your time, all of the time that you're spending on that, you are not focused on growing your own business. So I would always, to you and anyone else listening, recommend making sure you have a long enough runway to do that. So raising 99,000 in a short period of time, it sounds like you need to speak to Mohammed nicely.
And Dion, I see you shaking your head as well. Any additional comments to add for Thomas, or for Stephen, excuse me?
Sure. Stephen, thanks for the presentation. I don't feel too valuable to you in terms of, I don't know the space personally, but I would absolutely, sort of general observation, agree with Kevin is, we have a company that was doing, it's a nurse recruitment or staffing platform that did 2 million in revenue last year and is doing 30 million this year. And I mention it not to advertise them as much as, their experience as a small team with founders, and they had raised their first million only a year and a half ago. And they thought, well, we only need to go raise 500K and we don't want to be too diluted as a founding team. And then they raised it, and the company, 500K quickly, but the company then started to grow. And then they realized they're in almost full-time raising mode. And if I ask them, and I believe it's Kevin's point is really, if you can go out and probably raise more than you expect. If your worry about that is just so you can move faster. And if it's worry, of course, always founding team is worried about dilution. Look at, whether it's convertible notes or some other mechanisms, or at a very least, raising is always hard, but if you can, know that who you're raising from, at the early stage can still at least support you along the first third of the journey. I mean, raising 100,000 you can get from a not even a high net worth, relatively high net worth individual. But if you can raise it at least from someone, you're going to build a relationship and you're going to get, that 1.2. If they have, the wherewithal to be the next 5 million, that's ideal. They know you, you've got a relationship, they've seen your journey. Otherwise, you're constantly raising from new, which you'll be doing anyway, but you want to lessen that as much as possible. But my overriding point would just be to really echo what Kevin said, is in almost every case, early stage, I see someone said, we targeted 500,000 or 100 or a million. And in every case, they really needed 50% more, at least. So I'd aim at higher.
Yeah, Dr. Shakirath, I see you raising your hand, so go ahead. And good point, Dion. Arena, I see you, and Mahendra, I'll come to you last.
I agree with Kevin, I agree with Dion, and I agree with everyone about early fundraise. But I would like Stephen to also consider one more possibility, that in his chart where he showed his competitors are not going to be AliExpress. His competitor is going to be something that he has not even thought about, which is Google Lens, which is just going to transform the way the retail world is going to work. So I would want him to possibly revisit that particular scene to see actually what can be the real possible competitors, and try to be realistic in terms of what is achievable, because when you're competing with Google Lens, you're deploying a lot on AI, which has already been historically been done by Google. And when you're competing against the giants, you are you are building your own AI system and so on and so forth. So your cash runway may be shorter. It may be you may need a larger deployment of cash.
And on that too, I'll just add, and Stephen, I see you raising. Don't worry, we're giving you the advice, so don't worry. You'll have a chance to comment. I'll add on to that is that you're not competing with Alibaba. You're in two different worlds. You want, when you do a competitive slide, we want to see who are you competing with on your scale and a little bit above your weight class in that sense. So we get an understanding of who else is in this market, right? We understand Alibaba's in the e-commerce space, no question. But who else is in that same space that you are particularly, that maybe have raised or is similar or just above your size? So we get an understanding of who the landscape really is that you're competing, not necessarily who you hope to inspire to reach and or who may acquire you. That's part of our job as well to understand that. So just a furthermore on the point made previously as well. But before you comment, I want to get to Irina and Mahendra to make sure they get your feedback or give you feedback, and then we'll come back as well. So Irina, go ahead.
So to make sure that I understand correctly the product. So basically the problem is that a lot of merchandise in the stores is not available online. Am I correct? Yes or no? Yes.
Yes, that's one part of the problem, correct?
Yeah, so, and I can relate to that. I agree with that. I have my favorite stores where I like to go and do some treasure hunting. And it's true, it's not available online. My question comes in is, how do you basically close that gap? Will you have your contractors or employees going into those stores and doing skewing, or will you be relying on the store to update their merchandise currently?
Okay, to start with, we would definitely help store owners to update the SKUs and the product photos. And secondly, we would encourage the store people who are helpers, or if they do not have any people, to post on behalf of the store, just to give them more visibility.
And then what kind of incentives do these people have? Because it's kind of the transition. Those that are already on, how do you close the gap from those people that are already kind of there's an established online stores, right, that do merchandise, and then there's those stores that just don't have it, and the technology and everything has been available for quite a while. So how do you incentivize them to want to do it? And what would be then also incentive, not just for stores, but for those that would go and update that information?
Oh, well, see, it's about making yourself visible. So what we're saying is, as a store owner, are you visible enough? Like, for example, a store next to your street. Okay, you know there's a store there. Do you see what's in store? So our value proposition, what we're saying is, make yourself visible, yes? And secondly, we're saying, display what's in store. So show what you've got. If people see what you've got, they might be interested in you. And thirdly, we're saying, we have a platform where, there are influencers who can sell for you. If you're not a good seller, if you're not an influencer, okay, someone in the local area who is an influencer might help you sell. Or people can leave comments, recommendations. So once you get people, you'll know their friends. So we help you to get access to and give a wider reach. And you don't have to worry about delivery. We'll have it sorted out. We'll just get you the order. That's it. You don't need to have a shop. We'll help you do that. So this is our value proposition, actually. And that's a motivation of people why they would come, because sellers will save money, sell more.
Mm-hmm. And Mahendra, do you have any additional feedback to add as well for Stephen?
I just want to add to what Dion and Kevin has said, that I think what he's attempting is what I call a single serve fundraising, right? In the sense that you don't raise money for every milestone in your early life, right? So you should have raised money when you can go beyond the beta, because you'll find very few people saying, okay, I'm going to put $100,000 for you to do the beta, right? And so it's a question of how much you are asking and for what you are asking, right? The other advice I'll give to Stephen is that things are changing very fast in the e-commerce ecosystem. Now, you cannot say that my competitor is Alibaba or my competitor is Amazon. What investors want to see is that how do you fit into that ecosystem? If Amazon and Alibaba are going to be trillion-dollar companies, multi-trillion-dollar companies, right? They have the ability to actually have 24 unicorns in their ecosystem, right? Which are feeding into their larger ecosystem. So in the e-commerce arena, there's going to be a dramatic change, right? And then you will need to innovate within their ecosystem, larger ecosystem. You cannot say I'm going to be innovating outside their ecosystem and threaten Alibaba and Amazon, right? So that will not be a believable story by any of the investors. So instead of saying that Alibaba is your competition or Amazon is your competition, you say that, how do I bring value or add value to a customer who is logging into Amazon or in Alibaba?
Mm-hmm. That's great. So Stephen, we've got to wrap up for you. So real quick, give the audience a shout out of where they can find you online. And then we're all available after the show to further connect and give feedback. So what's your URL and where can everyone find you online? Stephen, this is to you. Where can everyone find you online?
Yes, I'll just share my email address and LinkedIn. And thank you for all the valid comments. I really appreciate that. And with every meeting, I get to learn a new perspective. And that's how I've been improving myself over the past few weeks. And well said. And of course, thank you all for listening to me and giving your valuable inputs. It helps us a lot.
And what's your website? What's the URL? Say it so the audience can see it. Yeah.
Medley.com. We have not made it live actually, so we have kept it on live at this moment. So that's why I cannot say that right now. So
got it. Well, it's already been said. It's already been said, but nonetheless, go check out Stephen Thomas Medley on LinkedIn and on medley.com. He will be available to chat with you in the audience and us as investors. So thank you, Stephen. Guys, to our second half of the show. I want to go quickly around everybody for 2 questions. This is lightning round, fun times. It's a Friday. So first and foremost, where are you shying away from, or where are you seeing kind of industries that you're pulling back, or investors? You don't have to be specific to yourself. Investors may be pulling back as things are shifting and may not be a focus. And Dion, I'm going to start with you, even though Kevin gave me a big smile, like he's got 7 of them ready in his industry or in his bucket, but go ahead. So Dion, where are investors are you seeing shy away from?
I'm going to have my good friends that run some funds that we talked about, earlier, our funds pivoting, and how do you go to your LPs and say that I was a real estate fund or a real estate tech fund, and now I want to be something different, and they'll tell me how many opportunities are there. But so at risk of offending them, I would say that's one is, there's an area that you've got, and maybe more in the private equity and commercial real estate space, but I would argue in much of the world that even after post-COVID, are we all going to pile back into offices and use offices at the utilization rates that we did in high rises around the world? I would argue strongly not across many industries. So if you're in that space right now, I think that's very difficult. There's some interesting real estate tech that enables that new normal, so that could be a different argument. But I think right now, unless certainly from a fund perspective, if you're a micro VC anywhere in the world, $100 million US dollar, AUM or less, you're finding the up and coming innovative disruptor type companies. And there's so many opportunities there. If you're more on the real estate side and you're a multi-billion, AUM venture fund, you're going to be very growth equity, and surely by your size, you can drive IRR and great opportunities there. But in the middle is a really tough place to be, I believe. Your 500 million AUM, you really got to focus. I'm going to say less industry and more stage. Is I believe those funds are going to have to go earlier stage to get the returns, and they're going to see less opportunities for the traditionalist space where some industries are getting not wiped out would be too strong, but you're seeing 10-20% decline in revenues or 50% decline in revenues. I talked to one PE fund that owns 240 different franchised restaurants. What does the future look like? What are those restaurants' revenues? We can all guess, but I think that that is a very, very tough space to be. So broadly speaking, is I like innovation. I like touchless. I like going to the proverbial where the hockey puck's going to be, not where it's at. So really do imagine we have a vaccine, since we're all talking about COVID, but even after that, how do people want to work? How do they want to engage? What services do they need? And how can they do it remotely? Everything in my worldview is around remote access to a mobile device. And how can you, as my one friend would say, asynchronous communication. How can I buy it when I want it, access those services when I want it, without having to do it face-to-face with you? And then where I want my human interaction, well, I can do that, but it's going to be when I want to do it rather than when it's imposed, upon me.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you, Dion. Kevin, to you, where are you seeing investment kind of shy away from right now?
Yeah, I'd agree with Dion in the whole property sector and whether people are going to want to return to work as they did before. And previously, employers were quite against allowing people to work from home because, we're not sure if it will work. But actually, most of the statistics that I've seen suggest that people are more efficient. So not only are they not having to spend the commuting time, but actually when they're actually working, they're more efficient as well. So I think you're going to see many more people wanting and being allowed to work from home or different spaces. So that whole office situation and shops and everything else is potentially going to change. So I think there's a lot of caution out there from the investment point of view. But more generally, I would say that there's a bit of a hole being blown in the SME market, where businesses haven't pivoted, as we've talked about before, or haven't adapted in the way to survive. So those companies that have managed to find a way to carry on are those companies that are of interest to invest in. But those that haven't, across all sectors, are going to be the ones that potentially need lots of help, but they're also the ones that are going to be the companies that many investors are not going to want to invest in, because they have proven that they weren't quick enough to adapt. And there's examples from Kodak that actually invented the digital camera but didn't do anything about it, all the way down through loads of other companies that have just not seen the writing on the wall and not done anything about it quick enough. And so the investors are being very wary of that, whatever the sector, whatever the size. So there is huge opportunity in those startups that have been very lean in these times. They haven't had lots of fixed assets. They haven't had loads of staff. They've come up, they've carried on working on the tech or whatever it happens to be in the background in the meantime, but they're now very well poised to
It's the tail of time, and I apologize, we're running out of time, so I just want to sum, it's the tail of time of just innovate or die, right? So if you don't move, you don't recognize, you don't foresee.
Absolutely.
Don't be shocked if you don't exist in 5 years. So Dr. Shakirath, you were one to follow up on comment on Kevin and Dion. So just quickly, what was your comment there?
I just want to double down on Kevin's statement and say that I'm agnostic of the industry. I wouldn't say that this particular industry or this particular sector wouldn't exist, but I would say that anyone who is resistant to change, I would just be a big red flag for me.
Digitization is here. Jump on board or forever be left behind. Irina, I see you unmuted. Do you have a quick comment? Oh, okay. Oh, that was you psyched me out. All right, that's all good. No worries. So, guys, thank you so much for everything today. I think this was a fantastic and insightful episode, just from so many different perspectives, as investors, as fund managers, making investments to raising funds. This is just phenomenal. So we're at closing thoughts. So would love to hear not just your closing thoughts on where fundraising is going, but also what advice do you have for founders that are fundraising in the next 6 to 12 months as your closing thoughts? And as you give that, just let everyone know where they can find you online. So advice to founders on raising for the next 6 to 12 as your closing thoughts, and then where can they find you online? Mohammed, we're going to start with you.
All right. So when it comes to advice, it's always hard. So I would say just try to be positive and hope for the best. Make sure that you have the right numbers, the right resources at your company, and you can find me online in LinkedIn at Muhammad Al-Majid. Thank you.
He's very active. So be ready. This in a good way. So he definitely will possibly, maybe, almost certainly respond. Mahendra, same to you. Closing thoughts as advice to founders raising in the next 6 to 12, and where can everyone find you online?
I think in the next 6 months, you need to be very, very focused and specific on why you're raising the money, right? And why do you need it now? Can you wait, right? And then you have to show a certain sense of urgency of raising money. Right? So I think it's run slightly contrary to what Dr. Shrikant said earlier, but a lot of people will love to hear that you need this money for the short term to be able to survive in the long term. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people will like if you go and be honest and transparent that I need this money to survive. Right? So don't shy away from saying that I'm done and over with the cash which I had, right? But I believe that my product is going to last out this crisis, right? Is there for the long term, but I need this $100,000 or $1 million or $2 million just to survive, right? And a lot of investors like us would appreciate that transparency and honesty in you, that you're looking for money just to survive and overcome a crisis. Right? And investors in the long term would like to support such founders who are honest, transparent, and say, I need this money because I know I'm going to be running out. Right? I may not survive.
Thinking.
And I may not survive, right? So that survival instinct is extremely important, right? Even in the long term. Most of us investors overlook that because we always believe that everything's going to be hunky-dory forever, right? So I think this is a lesson for investors also. This crisis is a lesson for investors that you also have to keep dry powder for your companies, which may run into trouble because of a situation which is out of their control totally.
And where can everyone find?
Ask for it, be transparent, right? And say that I do need this money to be able to survive.
And Mahendra, where can everyone find you online?
I'm there on LinkedIn. I'm there on LinkedIn, so just type in my name and you will get me there. Or just Google me and you'll find me.
Wonderful. And he's got a new fund focus on COVID. So if you're building products in this new era, this is the man to talk to. He's already mentioned it. I'm giving him a second endorsement.
And
definitely reach out to him.
I'm also looking at opportunities where people are going to say, I need this money to survive.
There you go. That's why he gives it as advice. Stay in tune. Kevin, same to you. Closing thoughts and advice for founders, and where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, just really to repeat what I said before, that most founders are guilty of leaving raising finance too late and not accepting how long it will take them. So please don't leave it too late. Make sure you raise enough and make sure that you really understand how much you're going to need and how long that whole process is going to take. So I'll keep it that short. So you can find me, my name's on the screen, and I have got the MSc after my name simply because I don't have such a rare name as some other people here. So so there's a few Kevin R. Smiths around, but Kevin R. Smith MSc is me on LinkedIn. But likewise, you can find me at Boom & Company, Boom & Partners, which is the company. And I have just written a book, Blockchain, Growing with Blockchain, which was published a couple of weeks ago. So both of those are all, the book's on Amazon and everything else. So you'll find me in lots of places.
Congratulations on the book. Drop me a link after or on the chat. We'll share it with everyone as well. More shameless promotion as we all deserve it. It's Friday. The audience it's valuable for as well. And to your point, it's okay to raise more money than you had initially intended. It's okay. Do not panic. To Kevin's point. Thank you. Dion, closing thoughts as advice, and where can everyone find you and this new fintech fund that you're putting together as well online?
Sure. I mean, my advice for a founder teams that are raising is, instead of reaching out to 100 funds as example, is reach out to 10, but take that time that those are reaching out to 90 without doing the homework. And a bit of what we talked about earlier is, look on LinkedIn, any way you can get a connection to, whether it's an analyst at the fund, a general partner, but to make sure that, whatever you're doing, that fund has people and partners that are passionate and experts in that space, so they can really help you. And if you're really doing something innovative in that space, and they understand that space, when you reach out, they're going to want to look and review it. Though just the broad, I'm raising, here's why, we'll 2,000 sort of looks that we look at companies a year, and we're predominantly impact, we're fintech, we're access to capital, we're access to jobs, we're early stage. So if someone reaches out and says, hey, I'm doing a D round and I need growth equity, and I'm involved in a different fund, but I'm like, you're reaching out to me as AIA, and I'm like, why are you reaching out? It makes no sense. But if you're saying, I'm a ed tech, talent tech, what have you, look at my background and you can find me. My name is Kevin said, same, my name's here, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm quite responsive. You'll see I have a lot of background in global talent tech companies. If you're doing something interesting, I'm going to see that, and it's going to catch my eye. And if nothing else, I'm going to want to learn and pay it forward and say, here's for one data point for you as a founder. Maybe try this strategy or what have you. You can either take that as a grain of salt or not. But my point would just be, any way you can find out, does what you're doing match the fund's thesis, and are they deploying right now? Before you even get to a general partner, do that homework, get connected to someone, even call their analysts. Oftentimes they'll tell you little tidbits of information which are very helpful, and then reach out.
Where can everyone find you online?
On LinkedIn. So with my easiest way is I mean, we're at, my email and contacts on our website, ai8ventures.com, but LinkedIn's very efficient for LinkedIn message.
Wonderful. Building those relationships early with analysts and principals and venture partners are a great way to get to know a firm, to Dion's point, and also just get general insights on the venture landscape if you're not already tuning into VCTV, another shameless plug. But Dr. Shakara, closing thoughts of advice, and where can everyone find you and the fund online?
Well, this is a wonderful time for startups to keep pivoting and deploy assets towards the pivoting model as such. And I would advise that startups pivot and keep on testing their pivot. And there's no better time than this to actually test their pivots as such. So my thoughts would be that, and I would double down on Dion's statement to analyze the fund first before sending out to before sending a very general teaser or a general pitch to everyone. So make it very personalized pitch. Make it a pitch which could just let the GP open up the email and say, yeah, this is a kind of company that I want to speak to. And that would be the closing thoughts for me. You can reach me at, just like Kevin, there are too many Shrikant Parthasarathy in India. So I'm Dr. Shrikant P. Parthasarathy, and I am the managing partner of Chakra Venture Partners LLP. You can reach me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Arena, closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you? And close us out for Friday here.
Thank you so much for this. It's my honor. I love having last words sometimes. I would like to confirm the point that we've been making. So my advice would be do what Dion said and make sure you do the research and reach out strategically, understanding what the fund or investor invests in. Once you do, I would like to that. Make sure that you demonstrate that you actually took on advice, because often you're going to get a feedback. And when you do so, remember, don't take it personally. It's not when you hear a criticism, or most importantly, what you think is criticism. Mm-hmm. Don't take it personally. Take your notes, do your homework, step back, follow up, and demonstrate to that investor that you did so. And I think that really begins a very strong communication and a long-term relationship. And most importantly, it allows you to be able to hear, because once you're going through those funds, let's say instead of sending 100 of them, put in work, put in 10, highly personalized, get the feedback, step back and see, is there a common denominator that's coming in as a feedback that you keep thinking that it's a criticism or something else, or you're just being blind to completely, and let that speak to you, and then allow yourself to move on then to the next stage. So if you need to reach out to the other 10 investors after that, you will have a better tuned language. And for investors, I want to also have advice for investors. It would be amazing as an investor had a presence and something to where the thesis for the investment, whether they're deploying, what they're looking for, was more transparent, so that it would save time for those entrepreneurs to kind of say like, oh yeah, that's, that is something that is a D, right? It's a D round investor. So I will keep that in my mind. And when I get to that round, before I get to that round, I will reach out to them. So then they're not wasting their time digging and searching. And you can find me basically everywhere. If you at Crypto Superwoman, well, basically will pop up on most of the channels, LinkedIn, wherever it is. And I'm very, very responsive. So whatever you want to connect, whichever platform it is, I'm basically there.
Wonderful. And thank you all very much for joining us. And again, going well over time today to continue to share the depth of knowledge that you did. very valuable for me, for everyone. It sounds like we all learned something today, and for our audience. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. We are all available as investors and entrepreneurs at your disposal online. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Thank you, Stephen, for the thumbs up. We look forward to hearing from you. And a big, big, big shout out to LATOKEN and to Elena and to the entire team for making this episode of VCTV possible and bringing us all together from around the world. Again, thank you to our audience. Everyone have a wonderful day. We'll be back here. Thank you, Mahendra. We'll be back here on Monday for another edition of VCTV with back-to-back episodes talking about transportation, supply chain, and many other industries and what's happening around fundraising. So stay tuned. Everyone have a good weekend. I'm Kyle Ellicott.